Salesforce permission sets and permission set groups, a guide and demo. As we continue our dive into Salesforce Security, today we're talking about permission sets and permission set groups. In past videos, we talked about how profiles used to be the primary control for granting access to elements inside of Salesforce. But now what's happening with the change is we're shifting those to permission sets. So a user can have one profile, and that should be stripped down and be just the bare bones of primarily information we talked about around like IP address access and primary level access and key defaults. But permission sets, groups of permissions that are put together in a permission set. And then what we can do is it used to be that you just added these permission sets to all the users. But now what you can do is you can group them together like Lego building blocks, building together more complicated groups of permissions that can be added to the users. And in fact, with permission set groups, you can actually create what's called a muting, where you can take away capabilities. So I'm going to walk through a demo where we're going to show building up permission sets and a permission set groups and the use of a muting. So I like to think that profiles and permission sets are the analogy of the getting into the building that is Salesforce is authentication and authorization. And then key elements to profiles and permission sets control access to the offices inside of it. And so those would, in my analogy, those would be the apps and the tabs and the objects and the fields and additional elements. So we're going to be focusing today on profiles, which should be one per user, and the minimal amount of permissions stored on that profile. And what we're going to be doing is looking at putting the primary capabilities on a permission set and then grouping them together into permission set groups. We're actually going to do this with a demo. So in this demo, we're going to have Paul, a pilot user, and I have a current sandbox where I have a couple of records, a couple of objects, one called a view of airports and another one for navigational aids. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Paul, the pilot user. We're going to then have a staff pilot profile with minimal permissions. And we're going to create a pilot permission set group, which will then be composed of two permission sets. One to view the airports, one to view the navigational aids. And then we're actually going to do a muting on the pilot permission set group. Now, I could have grouped these together into one permission set each, but for the demo, we're going to have separate airport and navigational views, assuming that there could be other instances where certain users might only need to be able to see the airport and other users may only need to see the navigational aids. This way we can independently grant them into a group that's represented as the pilot. And then what we're going to do is there is a particular field on the navigational aid that's representative of administration of this data, not actually the use of the navigational aids. So we're actually going to pull that FLS, field level security, away from the pilot so they don't see it. And then the pilot could have additional permission sets for pilot training, facility access, and as such. But we're going to build this demo up inside of a sandbox. So first, I have Paul the pilot. Right now, I've created him as a standard user. But what I'm going to go and do, let me make my screen just a little bit bigger. What I'm going to be able to do is go over to a profile, and we're going to create a new profile. And as we said, we should create a minimal access Salesforce user, and we're going to call it the staff pilot profile. So this should be the bare minimum access necessary. And then what we can do is go to the users. We can go Paul the pilot. And we're going to assign him to the staff pilot profile. So this should give bare minimum permissions to Paul the pilot. But now what we're going to do is we're going to create a permission set. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new permission set. And we'll go for the P. We're just going to put always with the prefix of P. Airport. View. airport data. And now I'm going to have save. And what I'm going to do is go to object settings and find there is an object called OA airports, which is a list of airports. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit this and we're going to give the bare minimum of what needs to happen. We're going to give them the tab. We're going to give it read. And we're actually going to get them all the fields on the airport object. And we're going to hit save. Now what I'm going to do is go to create a new permission set. P, navigational aid, navigation view. View navigational data. So I'm going to hit save. We're going to go to the object settings. We're going to go find the OA navigational aid. We're going to edit. Give them ability for the tab. We're going to give them read. And let's say I had given them all fields to view the nav aids. And let's say there was a specific reason why I needed to grant that for the entire permission set. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a permission set group. And we're going to create a new permission set group called the P pilot group. And we're going to go PS group for pilots. And hit save. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to add permission sets that we had already created in there. So we're going to go right here and we're going to add a permission set. And we had started our other ones with the prefix P. So I'm adding the two that we have just created. And done. So now we have this permission set group called the permission set group P pilot group, but we want to remove a field off the navigational aid. So what we're going to be doing is a muting permission set group. So by going here, this will actually, in previous times when you added multiple permission sets to a user, it granted them additional access. By adding a muting permission set, we can take something away from the group. So from here, I'm going to create new, and I can only have one muting permission set group, and I cannot create. So if I hit save, I can only delete it, and I cannot create another. So you get, each group has its own unique muting group that cannot be shared, nor can it be created ahead of time. And then I'm going to go into this. This is a muting permission set group. This is actually removing capabilities. So I'm going to go to object settings. And I'm going to go down and look for the navigational aid. And you see, when I go into edit, it's a slightly different screen. So what it has is the ability that it's showing me I can actually mute read or mute edit. And we're looking for a field called file name. So we're going to mute read and edit. And that means had the other permission sets in this group added them, this would take them away. So this should remove the file name. So it's been muted. And here. So now what we've done is we can go back to, this is the pilot group. And if I actually go to I can see the combined permissions. And I can go find the navigational aid. And what I can see is the user who has this permission set group will have read, and you'll see that file name is no longer available. So I have a permission set that grants access to all fields. And now I have a permission set that subtracts file names. So you can see from this diagram that my permission set group through the airport view grants access to airports. through the navigational view, grants access to all navigational and all fields. But then I have a muting group, which is only localized to this pilot permission set group, and it removes a single field level access. That way, that becomes the access that a user can have, and then I have additional permission set groups. So here I can go to Manage Assignments, add an assignment, and go Paul the Pilot, and next, assign. The other thing you can do with a group is you can control the assignment. What I'm going to do is I'm on the pilot group, and only from the group screen, when you do Manage Assignments, I can add an assignment. I can choose Paul the Pilot and hit next. But here is something special about permission set groups versus permission sets, is I can set an expiration date a certain amount of time and based on the time zone, and I can actually have this permission set group be removed from the user when it expires. So this can be an expired permission set group. So if you take your permissions, put them in permission sets, put them in groups, you can actually grant time-based access to users. So now I go here, and Paul the Pilot now has an expiration date on his assignments. So when I log in to Paul the Pilot, I have two tabs available, OA Airports and Nav Aids. And you can see, we'll see if we can see different airports. I can see the airports. I can see the navigational aids. But you'll notice there was previously a file name, and the file name is not here. And you'll notice there is no other access granted to Paul the Pilot. So you can see we have Paul the Pilot. We created a stripped down pilot profile. We created a pilot permission set group with two different permissions, adding view access. Could have also added additional read or other capabilities. And then I had the muting, which removed the field. And then I'm prepared to grow my model by adding additional permission sets groups around training or facilities. And I have the ability to have these permission sets groups expire. So now you see you should be creating profiles designed primarily for access and authentication. Permission set groups should be organized functionally around what groups of user capabilities are. And then they should be built up granularly with permission sets, which will have the actual items, and then add the muting where you need to. And this gives you the power to have a very well-built system where you can easily see what capabilities the user has and maintain it. I hope this was helpful and allows you to see the new capabilities of profiles, permission sets groups with muting. Thank you for seeing how we have permission for the groups. And join me again in future videos, same bat time, same bat channel. Subscribe to SteveTechArc YouTube channel or join me on www.stevetecharc.com and have a great day.